for joining us. I'm Cherie Parker, if you don't know, convener of the BCARM committee, and I also work with the team at the Geelong Botanic Gardens. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of where I'm talking to you from today, which is Wadawurrung country, and pay my respects to their ongoing custodianship of the land, waterways and skies. I suppose we set this forum up today to celebrate Botanic Gardens Week, which is where your health grows. And we're recognising the benefits of that the gardens and nature on our health and well-being, and how Botanic Gardens support and provide space for the promotion of the physical space that we provide, for mental health, fostering social connection, restoration of mental health, and strengthening our bond with nature. So the BCARM's webinar is titled Connection, Care and Wellbeing in Botanic Gardens. And we have 3 speakers joining us today. And just some quick housekeeping. If you can turn all your mics off while the printers are speaking, and we'll save questions to the end of the session. That's about it. And we are recording, as well. So if you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your cameras. And so first up, I'd like to present Andrew Laidlaw.
Thanks, Cherie. Can everybody hear me okay? That's good. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat to this group. And so I'm going to just try and share my screen, which we did successfully about 15 minutes ago. So I'm just going to bring that up, and I'll launch straight into my my presentation. Can everybody see that? Just got to get it up as a...
We can, yeah, that's it, mate.
That's good. And okay, it's my first slide up.
Yep, all good.
Great. Okay, well, thank you and welcome everybody. And I'm really going to focus on health and well-being, and in many ways it's been a huge motivator and a big part of the work that I've been doing in the Botanic Gardens, and with a really much stronger focus over the last few years to try and create many more immersive experiences. So look, just a very little bit about me, but I've obviously been in this game. There's a few of us that have been in this game a long time, but sort of 42 years in the industry and coming up to nearly 30 years at the Melbourne Botanic Gardens. But my journey's been enormous, and it's just would never have thought as a young man entering this area that I would have been given so many opportunities and had such a privileged working life. And my journey's taken me to places like Gaza and other parts of the world that are so crying out for gardens that bring health and well-being. And we're such a privileged community here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, where we're surrounded by gardens, but more specifically botanic gardens. And I think the role of botanic gardens has really shifted a lot. But I'm going to focus very much on this health and wellbeing piece, but also the work that I've largely been involved in Melbourne. But I'm now really enjoying my work down at Cranbourne as well. Yeah, I don't need to go through with our group, but the science points to so much benefit from being surrounded and immersed and wrapped by plants and being in green space. So, I think the world has changed. And what we've done in Botanic Gardens here in Melbourne, and I really encourage this with everybody, but we set up master planning processes, and these master planning processes really start to anchor us in what is relevant and what is connected, I hope, to the community that comes and is outside the Botanic Gardens. But over my 30 years, I've been involved in three master plans at the Melbourne Botanic Gardens, and I'm now sort of launching myself into one at Cranbourne. These are amazing processes, and I really believe in them quite strongly, but they have to be agile documents, not these kind of documents that we need to be totally committed to. They need to just create a framework. And what's interesting, but we've just finished in 2020, when I say just, but we've set the new master plan at Melbourne. And that new master plan at Melbourne, it had a different framework from the first one I did in 1997. And these ones, what's framing these current master plans, starts with the relationship we have with First Nations and our traditional owners. And what you see before you is a photo of the punt going over the Birrarung, and we're looking to what ultimately becomes the Melbourne Botanic Gardens. So we really have to seek and search for this deeper story that connects people for thousands and thousands of years. And I believe that's one of our challenges in our botanic gardens. And I'm pleased to say that the Botanic Gardens is involved in a RAP process with the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong people, but it really needs to connect to everything we do. And particularly myself as the landscape designer here, I'm working very closely with the Wurundjeri people. We're starting to set up some framework in Cranbourne where we're working with the Bunurong people, but they need to be embedded in the process of what we do on this landscape. And, the Botanic Gardens is an amazing, amazing piece of land, the one in Melbourne I'm now focusing on. But this new master plan really looks at the relationship and that deeper history. It looks at climate change and how this garden and all our botanic gardens are actually going to remain resilient through climate change. And the other third piece of this is this health and wellbeing piece to the public that come into these gardens. And botanic gardens can no longer be these scientific institutions. They can be these as well, but these are, I think, places of immense beauty and biodiversity, and we have to see ourselves as just one part of that, but we have to provide places where people can come and immerse themselves in this biodiversity. So that health and wellbeing piece becomes this other really important third piece of the jigsaw puzzle. And so the master plan that we've just recently reset for Melbourne basically looks at those three things. Now, when I first started in 1997, they weren't even being talked about. So it's very interesting how things change. The master planning process allows us to really capture what's incredibly important about the history and the layers of the history, but not to be absolutely a slave to it. So the beauty of the master plan is it allows us, and in Melbourne, it allows us to really capture and keep these incredibly beautiful parts of it, but allows us to do a whole lot of work around it, which starts to focus on those three really strong aims that we're trying to commit to. And so, these are some of the images of this incredible landscape, and we don't want to lose any of that. But we're working with our master plan, our landscape succession. We have a tree strategy and a living collection, which all kind of make sure that we're really managing this garden into the future. Now, my role as the landscape architect, and when I really think about the health and wellbeing piece, what we've been trying to do here is really change the way people interact with landscape. And this started way back with the Children's Garden 20 years ago. And the Children's Garden really was designed to be this immersive experience for children to connect through their creative juices and their play to landscape. And in some ways, this was the first piece that we did at Melbourne, which was one of those incredibly immersive experiences where kids can just come in and be in this space. And the aim is that it ultimately creates humans that are more connected to the picture of nature, and that as adults they'll be making better decisions and maybe connect to horticulture in all sorts of ways, whether that's at home or whether it's through the career or whether it's just a general understanding. But this children's garden was a really a big part of changing the people that they came, the different demographic of people that came into the Melbourne Gardens, but also the experience that they were having in the Botanic Gardens. It was a whole different language. And at the time, one of the great fears was that, how are we going to manage the children when they get into the bigger Botanic Gardens? Are we going to have to worry about the fact that they can walk across garden beds and all sorts of things? So lots of those fears really weren't that grounded on anything other than people hanging on to this intellectual adult approach to being in botanic gardens. So these are just some images of the children's garden. We're putting 300,000 kids through this garden every year. It's 20 years old. It's become a cultural piece for Melbourne. And I'm really pleased to say that one of the projects I'm working on with TCL is a children's garden billabong down in the Cranbourne Botanic Gardens. And this is a great proposition for young kids and for families, particularly in areas like Cranbourne, where we're getting 8 families move in a week. So we need to be appealing to the local people. We need to be getting the local people into our gardens, and we need to be rethinking how those experiences are drawing people into the gardens. And I know there's been lots of work done in regional botanic gardens where this space is actually changing and actually really starting to connect with local people. And it's incredibly important because that's the beginning of them having an immersive experience. That's the children's garden. The next really immersive piece of work we've been doing in Melbourne is with the Fern Gully. And while we've created a new walkway through there, which has allowed people of all abilities to come into that garden, and this is a garden of immense beauty, but more importantly, it's a garden where you are connecting with plants. You almost cannot help but run into plants and be in awe of the plants. And so I would like to sort of think that this is the place where people can actually come and sit and immerse themselves. And just more recently, I mean, the Friends supported us to build this boardwalk through here, but more recently we've built 3 small meditation gardens, and these were donated to us by members of the public. But these 3 gardens all have embedded stories within them. This is the Grotto Garden. This story was around a man that died, but his wife and him loved his property around Dunkeld. So we went down and collected the stones and we built a grotto here. More importantly, though, this is a garden space where people can come in, listen to the water, but be really intimate in this space with the plant material that they're completely surrounded by. I think we've had 2 or 3 marriage proposals just in the Grotto Garden. The symbolism of these gardens too was that each garden had a spiritual symbolism, not religious, but the grotto is a sort of a place steeped in religious kind of connotations where people would go into the wild and find themselves. The next one we created was a bird's nest, and this was where I worked with the artist David Wong, and he created the chrysalis. But we have this sense of a bird's nest, which is kind of wrapping, and the gesture is to hold you. But again, this was supported, and the money was given to us by someone who'd lost their auntie, and they had this relationship around birds. So the embedded story there is the birds, and we use that as the story to tell. Not that people need to connect to that, because what we're actually really doing is creating intimate spaces, intimate for people, 1 or 2 people to come and sit here and be surrounded by plants and actually feel and try to explore their relationship with nature. So these are some of the opportunities that we've been able to explore in the gardens. And, we have trouble moving people out of this swing, which is beautiful. People come in, sit in there, read their books. So again, the landscape language is about allowing people to come in here and immerse themselves. The last one was a wellspring. So the wellspring is this water gurgling out of the rock, and Charles donated the money here, and he'd lost his wife and his daughter in the 1 year. And we worked with a shika, and each stone represents a member of the family. But again, this is just, that's the embedded story. Our landscape tells these stories, but really it's for people to come in and just immerse themselves in the landscape. Now we sitting in the Melbourne Botanic Gardens within the most beautiful fern gully, and it's an incredible opportunity to do something like this. But these are very simple spaces. These are about organising space in an intimate way that allows people to come into those spaces, feel safe, but feel wrapped and supported by this plant material. It's so important that botanic gardens have this capacity to change and to embrace these ideas that we've talked about. And I'm not going to focus a lot on landscape succession and climate resilience, and even our traditional owner, but they all need to be in place. So I'm really drilling in on this capacity for us to be agile enough to change and to really create spaces that allow this this health and wellbeing place. The sensory garden was just done in 2022, and we've just done another little piece in here because our bamboo died. But again, we worked with Dementia Australia here. We created an all abilities access path. We've used a lot of traditional plants so people can connect to their old garden history. And we've tried to create extreme horticultural places. And this is our first sitting spot, which is under 7 persimmons, which you can't see very well here, but I'm really pleased to say that those persimmons now are 4 or 5 years old and are just starting to colour up this year. And then you move into the bamboo forest. And then you'd move into another sitting area where we've used the acacia limelight, and those limelights now are 3 metres tall, and they bring in this amazing golden light into this sitting spot. So we tried to create these extreme sitting places where people could have these immersive experiences. Just recently, and it's interesting, but all our bamboo died, and most of you will possibly know that bamboo is monocarpic, and actually when it flowers after 70 years, it dies. So we lost the bamboo in the sensory garden. So we've basically gone out and we've taken most of it out, but we're renewing it with a clumping bamboo. But at the same time, we had Kay and Philip and Zara come to us, and they had this incredibly difficult story, which was a story of loss, and they'd lost their 2 boys to suicide, and they wanted to help us build a garden, or for them to build a garden so that they could be part of this healing process. So it just coincided with the fact that the bamboo had all died. These boys had been at the children's garden opening. They loved the bamboo forest. So we just got this amazing fit, and it was serendipitous, but we were able to embed their story into this new sitting space within the sensory garden. And this has just been completed, and we opened this garden just last week for Kay and Philip. Now, the story of the boys is not overt. It doesn't sit there as someone that is even going to connect with that coming through, but that is what is embedded in this landscape. So we've used the bamboo that we removed as part of the seating. The mosaics tell a little bit of a story to the boys about there's kites, and then there's kangaroo paw, and there's magpies, and there's the gurgling water. The gurgling water is also a symbol of that well-being wellspring that just is that continuation of life and death, and it all happens within the bamboo forest. But the other lovely piece here was that Steph, the horticulturalist, and David Wong, my artist, basically used some of the leftover bamboo. They kept it in the ground, and we've created this beautiful bamboo structure, which so it all sits within this lovely bamboo form still. And then as the new bamboo grows, that structure will be removed, and they'll be sitting in amongst the renewed bamboo forest, which again is a symbol of new life. So these stories are important stories, and they help us in the design of these spaces, but they bring meaning and depth to these landscapes. And it's not just someone's idea, it's someone listening deeply to people. And in a way, I'd like to think it's the way traditional owners work in landscape. So another story which I just want to show, and most of you may have heard about this, but this was our white oak, and this white oak was a 165-year-old tree, and it absolutely collapsed, and it did this sort of a couple of days before Christmas. So we wrapped it in a safety fence, and then it completely fell apart. And while it was sort of tragic, it was also an awesome moment of nature. And as you just moved around this, you just realised the scale of this thing. And in some ways, there was this outpouring of the public coming in and just looking at this tree and what had happened to this tree. And it was quite a moment. So what we normally do is we normally just grub that out, get rid of it, and plant 2 or 3 new climate trees. Well, what I'd like to really suggest here, and it was through the process of design that we were able to create an intervention here and keep that tree there. Now, we didn't want that tree to stay as a fallen mess, but we wanted that tree to continue to give as a tree, but as a dead tree. So its life had finished as a living tree. But through the design process, we were able to stop the managers cleaning everything up. And in that process, we lost quite a lot of timber, sadly, because that process had already started. But we allowed those limbs to lie there until we went through and spoke to people and listened to people and came up with some options. And I was able to present some options. So these are some of the people and the stories that were told. I was able to get a drone photo of the way the limbs had actually fallen. But you can see most of the litter had been cleaned up at this stage. And then using that, if you see on the left-hand side, that's the way they'd fallen. And if you look on the right-hand side, and this is literally the only drawing that I had to do, but literally shows the main part of the trunk staying, the stump staying, because that tells the story. And then we rearranged those limbs, truncated them to create a new meeting place. We then wrapped all of that in Indigenous grasses, which goes to that deeper history of what would have been there as part of the landscape story before it became a Botanic Gardens. Now, Heritage Victoria struggled with this, and so did our directors and our CEO at the time, but they actually stuck by us. And with myself and Charlie and Alistair, who was the furniture maker, who came in and crafted the wood, we were able to really just lay this garden out in a very organic way. And you can see us working there. Once we had that plan, we were able to get a crane in and start to manipulate those limbs. You can start to see that we're arranging them and we're creating a space out of them. We're actually creating a new gathering place. Heritage Victoria had a problem with the fact that this was on our oak lawn, and that is a collection of oak trees. So how is all that going to sit? But to their credit, they gave us a temporary permit, which allowed us to move on and get this project done. Alistair was the beautiful furniture maker who came in and crafted this. Again, the friends, we rallied up some money. There was about $80,000 that was put aside. We didn't spend all of it, but that covered our costs. And then that is my drone photo of that garden finished. And this has become a new meeting place. I'm really pleased to see that it's a place where Jacoby and the traditional owners will start their gathering. And that is around a 165-year-old oak tree. But this has become a place where people can immerse themselves in this story. And that story of that tree still exists. So there's the limbs have been loosely arranged in the way they fell. The scar is still there. We've manipulated it a little bit, but the story can still be seen in the landscape. And so that becomes the landscape language of that area. And it's incredibly popular. The other, again, amazing thing from this, by allowing the slow process, we've had fungi arrive. We've identified 15 different species of fungi. And this wood is slowly going back to nature. But we've been getting this amazing growth out of the 3 trees we planted around here. And the arborists and that are feeling that, you know, the soil mycorrhizal environment has really just promoted and supported those new trees by not ripping them all out of the ground and just allowing that underworld to sort of do what it needs to do. So, and you can see how popular this place has become as a meeting place. Just more recently, we've done the drylands, and this is a direct landscape succession project. But within this, we've created a series of meeting places, and it's those meeting places which is what excites me, because that allows people to come into this space and sit amongst a really interesting group of plants. These are all plants that have been collected from warmer climates, but around each node point, they tell a plant story. And this one is about fire and the way those logs, basically the poles represent the fires, move through that space. And then basically there's a sitting space within there. And all the plants basically are like what would be existing in a post-fire environment. So we've got eucalypts that will coppice to manage that epicormic growth. So people can read that story. But the other thing to me that's really important is people can come and sit in that space. We've also got a fireplace in that space, which again is just another one of those pieces of connection. And while we have to manage that carefully, we've had probably 4 or 5 gatherings up there with the fire, and it's amazing how many people just come into that space and want to sit around that fire. So it's very, very pleasing that we've been able to do that. And then just want to finish off. Really, I've been pretty involved in working with the Wurundjeri people, and over the last 2 or 3 years, we've created gardens at the MIFGS show, and these are gardens that represent being on country. And that whole notion of being on country is about immersing yourself in country or in landscape, and it's about actually realising that we are only just one part of a much larger nature piece. So we have a really interesting process. We go through with the council, we present a drawing to them, we get a license to talk about the themes, and then we come up with a concept. So this was the concept. This wasn't last year's concept, this was the year before, but this was focusing on the wetlands and the swamps that used to exist on Wurundjeri country before colonisation. And we used to get these amazing wetlands between, the Yarra River or the Birrarung right down to the sea. And so in a way, we kind of tried to mimic those a little bit. And we told the story of the eel. And we also have to have Wah, which is the crow and the protector, and we have Bunjil, the creator. But more importantly, we sit and create a yarning circle which allows people to immerse themselves in this landscape. And it puts 120,000 people through this garden, but I'm pleased to say that quite a few of them end up finding their spot in the landscape. So this is us building this garden. This is the smoking ceremony. It's sited under a number of large figs, which were meeting place for the Wurundjeri people. So it has site significance. You can see our crows. Again, David Wong has done the crows using black umbrellas. These are a couple of this year or last year, we used the swamp paper bark, and we had herons there as well, which were grey umbrellas. But yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to do this work, and what sits at the heart of it is basically connection to country. This is the story of the eels moving through the landscape, heading to the sea. So that's where I want to finish. I'm very happy to take any questions or to leave it at that. But I'll hand it back. I'll hand it back to you, Sherry. I'll just get out of here.
Thanks, Andrew. We might just, if everyone can hold on, we'll do questions at the end. We'll just get through the other presenters, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. If anyone wants to pop some questions in the chat, I'll note them down and we can ask at the end of the session. Next up, so thank you, Andrew. That was really inspiring. I've seen a couple of your talks and they're always so inspiring, and I love that immersive spaces and just a different way of thinking about things, and especially around botanic gardens and our choices of plants and placement. Next up, we've got Simon Berry, who is from Geelong Botanic Gardens. He's actually in the background. So I'm just going to hand it over to Simon.
Good morning, all. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I must warn you that public speaking isn't my forte, so I apologise in advance if my presentation turns out to be more of a cure for insomnia. Cherie's asked me to give you a bit of a talk about my journey into horticulture as someone who's just recently finished an apprenticeship. So my journey into horticulture is both a bit unique and unconventional. My love of plants began in my early teens after watching the 1984 film The Karate Kid. Strangely, it wasn't the frequent beatings of the main character Daniel LaRusso that piqued my interest, but rather the Japanese gardens and miniature bonsai of an elderly, laconic Japanese martial arts master named Miyagi. I can't explain exactly what it was, but seeing his immaculately pruned gardens and these beautifully styled junipers and maple bonsai in small pots just resonated with me, and the seed was planted, pardon the pun. I started trying to find information on Japanese gardens and bonsai by reading books and even trying my hand at growing them. I collected and grew some Acer palmatum from seed that I'd collected from Geelong Botanic Gardens as a teenager. Sadly, however, after a couple of years, that's where it stopped. Cue high school career educators in an era when the belief was no degree equaled no competition for a job and, the risk of no job stability. This sort of diverted my attention to another interest, which was aviation, specifically Air Force fighter pilot, and resulted in basically wasting my VCE years undertaking advanced mathematics, science, physics, and other subjects that I neither understood nor found interesting in an attempt to meet the entry requirements. Suffice to say, my VCE results were as harrowing as an episode of air crash investigations, and just like that, my Top Gun career was grounded. My Year 12 results gave me two main options, IT or nursing. Now, I'd like to say that I initially chose nursing due to my desire to make a difference, but that would be a lie. I chose nursing because there were an abundance of girls who were also choosing nursing. It seems I wasn't the only male who'd cottoned onto this. As it turns out, the Bachelor of Nursing course I was enrolled in consisted of roughly half male and half female students. But it's amazing what a 2-week placement in residential aged care will do. Those filthy hounds quickly changed their minds when they realised they'd be washing bedpans and dealing with soiled linen. After this 2-week placement, there were just 3 males left in the course, the good kind, the kind your mother would be proud of. I soldiered on with the course and found my niche working in mental health. I was fascinated with the Mental Health Act, pharmacokinetics, the pace and unpredictability of the acute mental health inpatient unit, and applying what I was learning to help make a difference in these people's lives. After successfully completing the course, I secured a graduate position and ongoing employment in an acute mental health facility as a registered nurse. During this time, I was fortunate to win a scholarship to complete a postgraduate diploma in advanced clinical nursing mental health stream at the University of Melbourne, which is basically a specialised qualification for registered nurses, thus enabling me to practice as a mental health nurse. Now, for an innocent blonde-haired lad who'd previously studied in sleepy Ballarat, the University of Melbourne felt like walking onto the set of Downton Abbey. I was actually expecting the lecturers to be drinking Twinings and having finger sandwiches at 10:30. After completing the postgrad dip, I continued to study and learn on the job. I was fascinated by the intensity and challenge of the acute unit and the variety of often confronting cases I was being faced with, which range from psychosis, personality disorders, mood disorders, to name but a few. I also enjoy the challenge of pathology, taking blood, particularly on patients with a history of substance use, because their veins were practically non-existent. So it was a really good challenge clinically as well. As a mental health clinician, you also quickly learn how to gauge somebody through interacting with them and observing their behaviour from afar. This was of vital importance when undertaking risk assessments, as potentially it may be a matter of life and death. The majority of patients were fantastic to work with, and I enjoyed building rapport and assisting them with achieving their goals, which 90% of the time was for a prompt discharge. Throughout this time, I would often secure overtime work and undertake night shifts, which allowed me to travel the world, particularly Japan and China, where I found myself visiting every historic garden and bonsai nursery I could find. The passion was still very much alive. These holidays were also very therapeutic because I'd often travel internationally alone, sometimes to rural places in Asia where very little English was spoken. In a job where I was required to de-escalate and diffuse volatile and sometimes violent situations, it was a refreshing change to have minimal interaction and to be able to de-stress and be at one with nature, walking around breathtaking gardens like Kenroku Garden in Kanazawa, Japan, whilst listening to Peter Cetera's greatest hits on the iPod. Sadly, anybody probably under the age of 40 wouldn't know who Peter Cetera was. In total, I worked as a mental health clinician for over 10 years before deciding it was time for a change. I'd met a lovely lady who'd later become my wife and recognised that shift work was preventing us from spending quality time together. Now, the only verbal abuse I would receive on a regular basis would be from her. I obtained a position at a local university as a course advisor, special consideration officer, peer mentor program trainer, and a graduate sign-off assessor in Faculty of Health. So my career in nursing had been greatly beneficial as the majority of skills acquired were transferable. I was able to have the difficult conversations when, for example, a student had applied for special consideration for an assignment extension and they'd submitted the appropriate supporting documentation, which was all good and well. The only mistake they made was that they also uploaded the invoice of the company they'd paid in the interim to write their assignment for them. It was around this time that I joined the Geelong Bonsai Club, started regularly attending meetings and workshops to hone and develop my skills, and became a committee member. I also discovered a place in Ferny Creek called Conifer Gardens Nursery. It became my drug and the owner became my dealer. Unbeknownst to my wife, whom was at work, I would regularly make the pilgrimage up there on my rostered day off with an empty vehicle and a double shot latte, and return with the vehicle packed to the gills with pines, cedars, junipers, and anything else that would fit that I could Niwaki or bonsai. Upon returning home, I'd then frantically vacuum the car, hide my ill-gotten gains in the backyard, and pretend I'd had a most uneventful day. This dirty little tradition still continues, and I'm ashamed to say that even though I feel like I've been somewhat unfaithful, I've absolutely no remorse. Gardening, after all, is a passion, and I found solace in the arms of a conifer. I continued to work in the university sector for just shy of 10 years. The university sector kept evolving and with regular restructures occurring, which equaled jobs at the same level or higher being lost and the remaining staff picking up the extra workload, which meant increased pressure to meet additional deadlines. To cut a long story short, COVID hit and I found myself working from home, sitting in front of a laptop, answering phone calls for 4 hours, then switching to responding to emails for 4 hours. It got to the point in my career when I found myself asking the question, do you really want to pursue a career as an exotic dancer? And do you believe you still have the legs for it? Well, that wasn't the question I asked. I just wanted to make sure you're all still listening. I was actually noticing that I kept getting distracted looking through the window at the gardens with views of cascade pines that I worked on, bifurcated Acer palmatum, cloud prune camellia, and things of that nature. So seeing this on a daily basis left me with a resolute and unyielding need to be physically active and involved with plants full time. After almost 10 years in the university sector, it was time for a change. I started researching careers in horticulture and stumbled across G-Force Recruitment Agency. So I sent in my CV, resume, and waited in terror. Then it happened. I was set up for an interview with the City of Greater Geelong Parks and Gardens team for a position as an apprentice gardener, maintaining parks and reserves in the Geelong region, and was successful. I couldn't believe it. The guys were actually willing to take a chance on a weather-beaten old silver fox. I was so excited to be finally doing something I was truly passionate about. Then the fear hit, that fear being that I now had responsibilities. I was a husband and father of twin young sons, and I would be taking a pay cut and leaving a career I knew inside out to learn a new role in addition to returning to study 1 day per week, this time at TAFE. My fears were quickly allayed, however, when I met the Parks and Gardens team I would be working with on the trucks and Tony Hughes from the Gordon TAFE. Now, I've been blessed in the sense that I've never had a bad job, but I was enjoying this new career and TAFE learning so much that I actually really look forward to going to both work and TAFE. I will confess that the first day at TAFE was a bit awkward, as the students thought I was the teacher because I was so much older compared to everyone else in attendance. I then started being rotated through different City of Greater Geelong depots, and when I got to the botanics rotation, I fell in love. Aside from the squadron of mosquitoes, this place was heaven. I loved the team, the learning opportunities, the horticulture, the variety of different projects, and being able to give back to the community by providing a service where you actually see results and feel like you're making a difference. Thankfully, when a position became available at the Geelong Botanic Gardens, I was successful in my application. Not only am I now in the career I love, but I have also a fantastic leader in Cherie Parker, who now owes me a coffee for those kind words. I now look after the Malvaceae collection in addition to the Temperate, Forgotten Garden and Montaigne. So in closing, I guess the moral of my story is that the passion and desire for plants has always been there. It just took the better part of my life to achieve it and make it reality. Looking back over what I've shared today, you'll note that being around plants, whether it be in a garden or a pot, was paramount as a therapeutic outlet for my own health and well-being, whilst working in such a high-stress role as a psychiatric nurse and the constant time constraints and pressures, the demands of the university sector. I honestly do not think I would have lasted as long as I did in either role without this outlet, and for that I'm truly thankful. Perhaps my only regret is that I didn't make the change sooner. Thank you all for your time. Yeah, Cherie.
Thanks, Simon. That was really great. Thank you. We might just move on quickly, just noticing the time, and I'll get Jess maybe to hop on if she's still. Yep, she's still here.
Yep, I'm still here.
And then yeah, we'll ask some questions at the end. So I'll let Jess begin. Thanks, Simon.
No worries. Just give me a second while I get the presentation up. Oof, health, well-being and psychosocial risk. What a shocking title for a presentation. So I think like what we've been talking about so far today, you know, Andrew really spoke a lot about, you know, I suppose a botanic garden and our benefits to the wider community in terms of health and well-being. What I want to talk to today is about us and our well-being and our health and our psychosocial safety in the workplace. A little bit of background on me, because I see a couple of familiar names, but not that many. So I'm currently the manager of park services at Glen Eira Council. We actually don't have a botanic garden at the moment. Hopefully one day. But my background is in botanic gardens as well, so I do understand the particular pressures, I suppose, of those of us who work for our passions. So what I might just start. What is going on? I'm not used to driving these things, but here we go. All right, there we go. I understand that probably not everybody here is from Victoria, but in Victoria, last year on the 1st of December, a new set of psychological health regulations came into force, and they are now part of our occupational health and safety laws and place a clear positive duty on employers to manage psychological hazards in the workplace. So organisations now in Victoria must identify psychosocial risks. They must assess those, eliminate or reduce risks where reasonably practicable, and review and control, improve controls over time. So very similar to how we would manage physical risks in the workplace, the expectation now is on employers and on leaders to manage psychosocial risks in the same way. So in simple terms, it is about feeling safe to speak up, having manageable workloads, being treated with respect, and having clear expectations on and support. I did have a diagram in here, but I don't think I'm really going to go into it too much. It is really just about the way that, you know, what are psychosocial hazards and the way that they can, the way they come about in the workplace. These are some examples of psychosocial hazards in the workplace. Hopefully, they're examples that are, well, hopefully they're not familiar with everyone actually. You know, poor support, poor change management is a really big one that comes up quite a lot. Poor environmental conditions, interpersonal relationships between employees, poor organisational justice. Kind of you get the picture there. So psychological safety is not a bonus, it's a fundamental workplace right. So it's about feeling safe at work, physically and mentally, and it's being treated with dignity and respect. This is some work that I've been doing with my leadership team recently, and something that I've been talking to them about is when we talk about treating each other with respect, we're talking about being spoken to with respect ourselves, speaking to others with respect. But I think something that perhaps people sometimes forget is that we also need to speak about our colleagues with respect as well. So it's about what you say about me when I'm not there. That really sets the tone for a workplace, I think, in a lot of ways. It is also about speaking up or being able to speak up about your concerns without the fear of backlash, and having risks to your health and safety taken seriously. Oh, what's going on? Oh, there we go. So No, that hasn't. Oh, there we go. I think that's come up right for everyone now. So there is a role for everyone in psychosocial safety in the workplace. So in terms of leaders, our leaders have actually a legal responsibility now to set the tone for respectful behaviour in the workplace, to act on risks and to create a safe environment so that everybody feels safe in the workplace. Our team members, our colleagues, we have a responsibility to treat each other with respect. We have a responsibility to call out and raise concerns and also to support each other and contribute to a safe culture. And our organisations, hopefully everybody in this call has had some kind of work done in their organisations around this, but organisations have a responsibility to put in place systems, policies and support to respond to concerns consistently and fairly and to improve, continuously improve our processes and procedures in terms of creating a safe space for everybody. Now, I did have a bit of a scenario I wanted to go through here. So basically, a little bit of history. So I've been at Glen Eira Council for 4 years now. When I came into the council, I was in a different position, but I was leading quite a large team. And culture was quite frankly like scraping the bottom of the barrel. Over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work to improve that culture, to improve the way people feel safe, to bring up issues and concerns in the workplace, and to really work very hard on that appropriate workplace behaviour. So a discussion that I've had with one of my crew leaders was around, you know, because we're a very male-dominated workplace here. There's a culture of, you know, like everyone works hard, everyone likes to have a laugh. Sometimes in an environment like this, the jokes that are said to get that laugh can be a little off colour. We had a discussion one day around, you know, around those jokes, you know, well, and he was like, well, you know, if someone's offended by a joke, they can just tell me, and then I won't make that joke again. That's fine. I'm open to change. Now on the surface sounds reasonable. He's like, well, yeah, you know, I've got no problem if someone has a problem with my joke. They just need to let me know, and I'll never do it again. Now there are quite a few problems with that kind of statement. So basically, by the time that joke has come out of that person's mouth, you know, everyone's had a bit of a laugh, the harm's already occurred. So that joke has signalled to, you know, whichever minority it was about, that they are not fully respected or understood in that workplace. And that person may feel excluded. They might feel on edge, and they're now unsure whether they can be themselves. So the person that's made that joke and the people who have laughed along with it have just shown that person that they're not safe. They're not safe to be open with. They're not safe to be their full selves in that workplace. It shifts the burden. So saying, tell us if that's not okay, it puts the responsibility on the person affected or on the bystanders that have heard that and kind of gone, oh, that's a bit, you know, that's a bit not right, instead of the team taking responsibility for that behaviour up front. And the barrier is now created. So in reality, in those situations, 9 times out of 10, no one's going to call that out. There is the fear of backlash. There's the fear of not wanting to stand out. And there's also power dynamics as well. So if you're a new crew member on a crew, you don't want to be seen as that person who's now going to spoil the fun for everybody else. Safety is about consistency and not intent. So it actually really doesn't matter if you intended to be offensive or not, if you thought it was a funny joke. What matters is how the other person took it. So it's perception that's important, not intent, and safety is judged by the impact and patterns of behaviour. Something else, so I'm nearly done, I wanted to keep this nice and quick because I know it's a bit of a dry topic. One more story I wanted to share just before I go into a closing message was about an interaction I had about a year ago. I went out with an old staff member of mine who I'd worked with in a previous organisation, because she just resigned. She was moving away, and we got along pretty well. So I went out. We had a pub meal and a beer, and she said to me, I really appreciated when you were working with me, and for the first time in my 25-year career, you showed me what a safe workplace was. Now, my first thought was, well, that's really nice to hear, the warm and fuzzies. Oh, it was really quickly followed, quite honestly, by like a white hot burning rage, because how dare I be the first person in that person's 25-year career who had showed them what safety at work looks like, who had shown them that they were welcome to bring up their concerns, that I would listen to them, and then that I would act upon those concerns, and that I would create a workplace where that person felt like they could bring their full selves to work, be open and honest, without the fear of being labelled as difficult. And I did just want to close with that story because I think that every one of us, whether we're a leader or whether we're not a leader, we all have a responsibility to create a place where our colleagues feel a sense of safety, that they're not waking up in the morning feeling nervous about coming to work because they don't know, what kind of a reaction they're going to get, where they don't feel like they're going to be labelled a snitch or a tattletale for voicing something that has made them feel unsafe. We need to build workplaces where we're looking after each other. And I think sometimes in careers, like this today, in careers like Botanic Gardens, we're all so passionate about the plants and the landscapes that we work in. I think sometimes we forget to look out for ourselves, because we're so concentrated on what we're providing for the community, but it is a really important part of it all. So, closing message, everyone has the right to feel safe at work. People need to feel safe speaking up, and if they don't feel safe, then they won't speak up and you won't know what the problems are. And safety needs to be brought into every interaction. And I'm done.
Thanks, Jess. No, that was really great and really important messages as well. It's actually been nice to cover, I suppose, I think 3 very unique discussions or presentations about our role, I suppose, in the workplace as well as when we're out in the garden, how we can help health and wellbeing, how we can help our staff and colleagues as well in the workplace. We've got about 5 minutes left, so just if anyone had any questions. I know Sam, I think, had his, if you wanted to just unmute yourself or and ask away.
I wanted to ask about the fire pit and how often that is used, in what context is it used? Is it just for smoking ceremonies? Do you have campfire events or programs, anything like that?
I think that one's to you, Andrew.
To you, Andrew. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
So was it Sam? Thanks, Sam, for asking that question. Yes, and the fire pit does create a bit of controversy, and but when we think about fire pits and we think about sitting around fires, this is something that has gone on for thousands and thousands of years. So it's an important element, but it comes with a real consciousness around how it gets used. So obviously, we've also just put a fire pit in a new garden down at Cranbourne Botanic Gardens as well. So obviously, as part of this, it's also very connected to the First Nations story and way of yarning and sitting around. So the fire gets legitimised now a little bit more, and it's good because we can have this discussion with the health and safety officers. But in Melbourne, it's a lockable fire structure, so it has an actual cover over it, which gets padlocked. And that has been used on a number of occasions for social gatherings, not just traditional owner gatherings. So there's been a couple where we've met with the NARRP team and they've come in and worked with us, and we've opened up the fire and had lunch around it. But we've also opened it up on a number of occasions for a staff send-off, where we've opened it up and staff have cooked. And we've also had it a couple of times just on a Friday afternoon. But it comes with, there always has to be someone present who actually takes responsibility for starting the fire, putting the fire out, and that person, you know, it isn't like a nominated person within the organisation. It's just someone that puts their hand up to take that responsibility. So it's gently, but it's it's really been interesting to push those boundaries a bit. And I did get a bit of pushback, but overall the organisation supported us in this process. So yeah, it's good, but it has to be done carefully.
Yeah, thanks. I used to do quite a lot of fire programs when I worked in a state park, and I'm interested in being able to continue those. But you know, so far we haven't had the discussion, so it's really good to know that other botanic gardens have taken this leap, and I think having fire and access to fire is really important. Especially for kids, because they get to learn safety and they get to learn, you know, the concept of fire and how it works and all the great things that come with it. So, yeah, that's really awesome to hear, and fingers crossed that can help the rest of us to move forward if we want to do fire programs. So
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, it's exciting.
Thanks, Sam and Andrew. I had John with his hand up.
Thanks for three just powerful presentations. Amazing program. I was just wondering, Simon, if you love the narratives, love the humour, but whether you've considered mashing up some aspects of your career to date through the likes of that sort of Therapeutic Horticulture Australia work, and whether you're aware of that group and what they do.
No, I'm not aware of that group, John. So
yeah,
it'd be interesting to learn a bit about that.
Might be something to have a look at. They do some really lovely work, which is, you know, combining some of that. There's a fellow called Stephen Wells who operates out of the Austin Hospital, and he's a nurse and a horticulturist. And it's a really interesting mix.
Oh, lovely. Will do. Thank you for that.
No, but thank you. It was a wonderful narrative.
Thanks, John. Andrew?
I just wanted to follow that up. As soon as I heard Simon talking, we're doing a bit of work through an organisation called Global Gardens of Peace, and we've put in a number of gardens in hospitals, the psych ward at the Alfred, and we're working on one at St Vincent's. And to get someone that's got horticultural skills and nursing skills is a rare quality. And as John mentioned, Stephen, so there's a real connection between those two skill sets, and they're rare to find. So yeah, I just wanted to back up what John had said there.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad this is recorded. I'll show this to my wife. I still have to do the dishes at night when I get home. So I'll be using this to my advantage. Thank you both.
I'd love to put you in contact, Simon.
Thank you.
Good on you.
Thanks, everyone. I'll just quickly check the chat, but yeah, amazing presentation. So thank you. I don't know if Jess and Andrew want to come back on, and yeah, just a big thank you, and Simon, to all three of you for coming and speaking on behalf of BCARM today. We all really appreciate your time, and it's really nice to have that inspiration and motivation and knowledge and expertise come through. So thank you, and thanks everyone for joining in. So we will be, our next forum, we're actually going to host with BGen, so that'll be in July. So we'll hopefully see everyone in July, but enjoy the rest of Botanic Gardens Week. And yeah, we'll see you all